In the bitter winter of 1945, while the thunder of the Ardennes still echoed across Europe, another war raged thousands of miles away, high over the Pacific. The islands of Luzon burned under the weight of invasion, and in that vast sky, a young American gunner named Marlon Redford prepared to fly a mission that would defy belief. Redford was 23, a Kansas farm boy turned airman, quiet and steady, known to his crew simply as Red. He was the tail gunner on a B-24 Liberator called Iron Vengeance, a machine built for endurance more than beauty, heavy, loud, and endlessly vulnerable. Each mission felt like a bet with death. On the morning of January 14th, the 82nd Squadron lifted off from their island base at dawn. The air was thick with humidity, the sky painted with streaks of pink and steel gray. Their target, a Japanese convoy moving along the Luzon coast. Standard operation, high run, low drop. But every man aboard Iron Vengeance knew there was no such thing as a standard flight anymore. As the bomber rose above the sea, Redford settled into his turret, his glass cocoon of metal, sweat, and noise. From back there, the world stretched out in a 180-degree panorama. Ocean, sky, and the faint curve of the earth. It was both beautiful and terrifying. For nearly 2 hours, the flight was uneventful. Then, at 0913 hours, the radio crackled with urgency. Bandits inbound! A familiar chill ran through the crew. Redford's eyes scanned the horizon until he saw them. 5 black specks emerging from the glare of the sun. They moved fast, gracefully, and deadly. Mitsubishi A6M Zeros, the pride of the Japanese Imperial Navy. The formation tightened. The pilots ahead braced. Redford steadied his gloved hands on the twin .50 caliber Brownings. The engines of Iron Vengeance growled beneath him. The attack began like thunder. Tracers slashed across the sky, orange and white streaks cutting through the morning haze. Cannon shells pounded the bomber formation, tearing into wings and fuselages. The air was filled with the metallic shriek of bullets and the guttural roar of engines in combat. Redford fired back. The Brownings erupted, each burst vibrating through his body. His tracers found their mark. 1 Zero blossomed into flame spiraling down into the sea below. The satisfaction was short-lived. 4 more descended. The next volley tore into Iron Vengeance. A round pierced the left wing. Hydraulic fluid sprayed the turret glass. The bomber shuddered as alarms blared in the cockpit. Redford held his fire, then squeezed again. Nothing. The guns jammed. He cursed silently, ripping open the feed covers. The belts had twisted, the ammo jammed tight in the receiver. He could feel the plane losing altitude. Overhead, the Zeros began to loop for another strike. The situation was hopeless. A defenseless bomber, a crippled turret, and enemies closing in. That's when desperation sparked something wild in him. He remembered a story from training, an instructor joking about illusion fire, how in the chaos of battle, light and fear could deceive. If the enemy believed you were still firing, maybe, just maybe, they'd break formation. By his leg, clipped to the turret wall, was an emergency magnesium flare gun, used to signal distress over the ocean. Redford grabbed it, wedged it between the barrels of his silent Brownings, and aimed it directly at the incoming fighters. The Zeros began their dive. Redford pulled the trigger. A violent burst of white light erupted from the tail, brighter than tracer fire, blinding in its intensity. For the pilots diving at him, it looked like twin cannons opening up in full fury. Startled, the lead Zero swerved hard right. His wingman mirrored the move too late. The 2 aircraft collided in midair, disintegrating into a ball of fire that rolled through the clouds. For an instant, the sky turned orange. The bomber shuddered as debris rained past. Redford reloaded the flare gun and fired again, the light slicing through smoke like lightning. 3 Zeros remained. They began to circle, confused. Redford could feel his heartbeat echoing in the metal hull. Below the turret, a loose auxiliary fuel drum, half empty and leaking, rolled across the floor. Without thinking, he kicked it toward the hatch. As it tumbled into open air, he fired one last flare. The magnesium charge struck the falling drum. It ignited midair, a sudden bloom of fire beneath the bomber's tail. To the Japanese pilots, it looked like Iron Vengeance had exploded. The Zeros dove to confirm the kill, but the bomber still lived. And Redford, having finally cleared the jammed feed belt, swung the Brownings back to life. He squeezed the triggers, this time for real. Two streams of 50 caliber fury erupted into the sky. The first Zero disintegrated, its wings folding inward before vanishing into the ocean. The second tried to pull away but collided with the last, shredding both in a spiraling fall of smoke and steel. Then silence. 5 Zeros destroyed in under 3 minutes. The crew of Iron Vengeance sat in stunned disbelief. The radio buzzed with static and broken voices. Redford leaned back in his turret, breathing through the smell of gunpowder and scorched oil. The flare gun lay beside him, its barrel blackened from heat. The Pacific stretched below, calm and endless, as if unaware of the chaos that had just unfolded above it. When the bomber finally limped back to base, one engine dead, the fuselage scarred and bleeding fuel, the ground crews rushed forward, expecting bodies. Instead, they found a shaken but alive crew, their tail gunner covered in soot, staring quietly at the horizon. The after-action report was difficult to believe. 5 confirmed kills from a single gunner, 2 of them caused by collisions, 1 by direct fire, and a flare gun listed under unconventional weaponry. Some officers dismissed it as exaggeration. Others called it impossible, but every man aboard Iron Vengeance swore by it. They had seen the light burst from the tail and the enemy scatter in confusion. They had seen fear change the tide of battle. Within days, Redford's story spread through the airfields of the Pacific. They called it the insane trick. Pilots retold it in mess halls and tents, a desperate gunner who turned illusion into survival. Months later, Japanese combat logs would confirm the event. On January 14th, 5 Zeros were lost in an engagement near Luzon, their surviving wingman reporting blinding gunfire from a heavily damaged American bomber. They never knew that what blinded them was a single flare. When the war ended, Marlon Redford went home quietly. There were no parades, no medals pinned to his chest. The paperwork for a commendation was lost somewhere between the islands and the mainland. He returned to Kansas, opened a small repair shop, and spent his days fixing tractor engines instead of aircraft guns. He never spoke much of the war. To the few who asked, he would smile faintly and say, "It wasn't courage, just a trick that worked once." Years later, when he passed away in 1972, the Air Corps sent a flag and a short note of thanks. His name faded from the records, but not from memory. The few surviving crew of Iron Vengeance would gather occasionally in silence, staring at old photographs, still trying to make sense of what they had witnessed. Somewhere over Luzon, in that brief flash of magnesium light, one man had rewritten the rules of survival. It wasn't strategy or training, it was instinct. A moment of reckless brilliance in the face of certain death. The Japanese called it deception. His crew called it genius. History simply called it unbelievable. Because sometimes war doesn't belong to generals or tactics. Sometimes it belongs to a single man, alone in the sky, out of ammunition, armed only with a flare gun and the will to fight back. And on that day in 1945, Marlon Redford fought back so fiercely that even his enemies stopped to wonder what they had just seen.